The UN Security Council has come to a rare agreement on Syria, condemning in the strongest terms the Syrian mortar attack which killed 5 people in the Turkish border village of Achakale. The statement was agreed despite Russian objection to an earlier draft describing the attack as a threat to international security.
Members of the Security Council condemned in the strongest terms the shelling by the Syrian armed forces of the Turkish town of Achakale. The members of the Council demanded that such violations of international law stop immediately and are not repeated.
The Turkish people of Achakale have buried the victims of the Syrian army's artillery. Only now are police telling people who live near the border fence that they must move away for safety. It's too little, too late. Local anger is rising. Some of it is against the Turkish government for bringing this trouble home by backing Syrian opposition fighters. Anyone who supports them inside Syria is himself a terrorist. They're taking up arms against the state, says this man. This problem started a month and a half ago. If the government had showed up then, we would have welcomed them. But now people have died, says another. But when opposition politicians show up, they're accused of provocation. Get in your car and get out of here, a local shouts. The crisis in Syria is slowly turning into a major political as well as security issue for Turkey. In Ankara's parliament, deputies met to give a mandate for Turkish military to enter Syria and Iraq if necessary.
This is not a war memorandum. This is a deterrent measure taken in line with Turkey's interests for use when it needs to protect its mainland. Turkey is only seeking to protect its rights.
Agreeing that Syria's cross-border shelling violated international law was a key concession by Russia, Damascus's most important ally. The text was still watered down upon Russia's insistence on not calling the attack a threat to international security, a phrase that could imply a need for greater Security Council involvement. The UN condemnation came after the Turkish parliament passed a law authorizing the army to attack Syrian targets. But the country's prime minister insisted he didn't want to go to war with Syria.
Turkey's Prime Minister says his country has no intention of going to war with Syria as protesters worried about an escalation of the cross-border violence marched through Ankara and Istanbul. In the capital there were some clashes between protesters and police. Turkey has attacked targets in Syria after a mortar bomb fired from Syrian territory struck a Turkish border town. Parliament approved further possible military action outside Turkey's borders, but the Prime Minister said the aim of the move was to deter further attacks. He warned that his country's determination should not be tested, but said we only want peace and security in our region. This is what we care about. We have no intention of war.
These Turkish troops patrolling the border now have the political backing to cross into Syria. A repeat of Wednesday's shelling, and Ankara will not need to wait to give orders to attack. When Syrian missiles hit Turkey, 5 people were killed, 3 children, their mother and a friend. It was the latest and by far worst spillover of fighting inside Syria. A senior politician has been visiting the wounded in hospital, trying to reassure the country that the government has the situation under control.
But outside Turkey's parliament, angry anti-war protesters clashed with police who used tear gas on the crowd. Back on the border at the scene of the attack, residents welcomed Turkey's response. This man told me it's the first time in days that he's been able to come out and enjoy coffee with his friends because there are no shells from Syria landing in Turkey. Tonight, the Syrian government, facing international condemnation, has officially apologized to Turkey for the loss of life, promising not to let it happen again. Meanwhile, Turkey is being urged by its allies, including the United States, to exercise restraint in this potentially explosive situation.
Meanwhile, Syria has apologized while also asking Turkey to tighten its borders. Take a listen.
The Syrian government, of course, sympathized with the martyr Turkish woman, as well as with her children. And we are asking the Turkish government also to show the same kind of sympathy towards our hundreds of civilians, innocent, who fall due to the suicide bombings of the terrorist groups. Some of them came through the Turkish-Syrian border.